Welcome to Circle Podcast, brought to you by Circle Sanctuary, one of the oldest nature spirituality churches in the United States, connecting people of nature-centered paths around the world. Join us throughout the week for a variety of shows discussing various topics, celebrating the divine in all of its forms through nature worship, rituals, education, and building bridges of community. Welcome to Urban Unwitches, a podcast to educate, inform, and expand the pagan community. Please join our Discord channel, Urban Unwitches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban Unwitches, and listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. You can also join us on YouTube at Urban Unwitches. Now, back to the show.
Well, hello, precious.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing phenomenal. Last night, I got to open a Christmas present that my good friend Dia sent to me and my student group, and it was wonderful.
Really? Did that go well?
It went super well. We had a couple of folks who really got it, and then one of my students he's been really struggling because he's the words just left my brain. Clairtangent? Yeah, like he physically feels. Yeah, I don't know why my brain just went blank on that. So he doesn't see anything. And so he has been so frustrated because he feels the energy, he feels the movement of the anima, but he doesn't really know how to interpret it. And he got so frustrated as everybody else was getting it right and right and right. He's like, well, shit. And it was so funny because once he described what he felt, I was like, you are expecting to see colors. You're expecting to see all of this. And then I'm like, but you're feeling temperature changes. I have central heating. I have central air. There are not massive temperature changes in the middle of my room. All right. We don't have like a heat sink system. So like feel it again. And then you got to see that moment. And as a teacher, it's that moment that I love, where the light goes ding and they get it. And it's like, this is what it is. Okay. And he's like, but I want to see colors. I'm like, that's okay. Most people don't see colors. Most people don't see energy. Most people feel it or they smell it or they taste it. My mother has a psychic schnoz. Like she smells scents. Like it was a whole thing, but it was wonderful. We had a phenomenal time with it. We did our auras and energy class last night, and at the last exercise, I brought out the balls, and it was wonderful.
So if you didn't hear the first time, I crocheted balls with specific energy in mind, and then sent them to Kyler with a key, so that in an envelope sealed, so that they could play the game. What is this psychic energy? And then guess it. And that was my gift to him and his students. And that's what he's talking about, balls, just so we're clear.
For the first time, folks, it's completely innocent. There's no gutter mind there at all.
Right.
The funny thing though was when we got to the red and green one, one of my students just kept saying, why do I keep seeing your face? Why do I keep seeing your face? That's all I'm seeing. And that was the friendship one.
I was about to say, it must have been fierce friendship. Yep. Fierce friendship.
I snickered muchly, and I was so proud of them. Classes like that remind me why I teach, why I take the time to make PowerPoints and do. Okay, I'm not going to pretend that making PowerPoints is boring. Like legit, I love making PowerPoints. And my auras and energy PowerPoint is the prettiest I think I've ever made, because thank you, royalty-free art from the interwebs. But it was wonderful. It's been a while, and I'd forgotten how much I missed just having a student group that was completely dialed in and had to kind of lock in on what they wanted to do. Our last class was the year wheel. The year wheels that they made, part of their homework was to design a year wheel that had the imagery in it. My niece is one of my students, and she created this giant 4-fold out year wheel and hand drew like skulls at Samhain and just the whole thing. It was absolutely gorgeous. And I'm like, this is why I get my chunky self out the bed every morning. This works.
Yeah.
How about you? What's been up in your world?
Well, so for those who don't know, I have a B12 deficiency and it caused brain damage. And so I forget things. And when I say I forget things, I mean I forget things. And I found this beautiful green book. And it turned out that it was full of notes for geomancy, which is my favorite divinatory system, that had been very carefully, like in nice what's the journal, bullet journal style, had put in all of this work to it. The only problem was that I had used pens that you couldn't erase. And so there's all these markings out and stuff. So I've decided to start again and just redo the book only with pens I can erase. So it'll be nice and the same and pretty. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing, there's one of my bullet journal
Ooh.
pages, and then here's uh the zodiac signs. So I'm just going through and redoing all the pages. But so it sounds stupid, but that's how I remember things, just repetition, repetition, repetition. So
Mhm.
this is just another way to help me remember some of this information. Um, and so I've been doing that. And then I LARPed last weekend. Um,
Mhm.
and it was a smaller LARP. Our LARPs run 70 to 80 people normally, and we only had about 40. We had people dropping out like flies at the last minute. It's winter and people are sick. And but it was, even though it was smaller, it was a really, really, really good adventure. And they introduced a new world because we're a world of worlds. And they introduced the new worlds. And if you've ever heard of the borrowers, it was like the borrower's world was introduced, and they have their own magic. And I've decided my character's totally getting that magic. I want the borrower magic. Only
That is really cool.
they didn't call them borrowers, they called them littles. And
Mhm.
they were from Boxwood, is the place where they live. And so it was very interesting, but it means that other people can come in as littles now. Like it's a
Mhm.
whole new world people can now become and come in as littles. And I have decided that because you only can keep your character until you have so many character points, which is usually about 3 to 4 years. And so
Mhm.
I've decided my next character is going to be a little, totally going to do that once I retire Snowberry. And then I got to wear my new cloak at LARP. It's a
Mm.
rainproof cloak, and I showed it off. Everybody was like, "Ooh, that's really cool!" And then it started raining, and they were like, "Snowberry, go out in the rain, see if that cloak works." And so I did, and it does. And we were like, "Yay, the cloak works!" Woo! So we did that, and so that was going on, and I've been really super busy.
Mhm.
I've been doing readings off my website, revdia.net. You can get a geomancy reading for me, an horary astrology reading, an intuitive reading. They're all different price ranges. And I've been doing a lot of those, like paid gigs, like so much so that
Mhm.
I paid for um new winter pants I wear. So at LARP, in the winter and sometimes in the spring, I will wear riding pants. And there's like horse riding pants, because
Mhm.
the seats are reinforced, and I sit on a lot of wooden benches that prick
Mhm.
things. So the seats are reinforced. They're actually usually pretty well made, and they're stretchy, so they're comfortable and they move well. So I bought some that also had a lining in them now, so that the wind doesn't
Mhm.
blow right through them. And so I was able to buy those based off of the money I got doing readings this month, which was kind of cool. Um,
Very
and then
nice.
and then I'm going to be on a new podcast. You should go look it up. It's called The Hearth and the Stag. And this podcast runs on Carillion TV, which is, if you don't know, Carillions are a specific denomination, if you will, of paganism. and they have a pretty large reach, and it's a bunch of people that have never heard of us. And so I'm excited to go on, and we're just going to talk about all the stuff I know, because I sent a list and he was like, yes, we'll talk about all of this. And I was like, I don't know that we'll have time to talk about it all, but okay, we can, whatever you want to cover. We'll do that. So I'm going to be on there with them, and that'll expose us to new people. And then we are no longer number one, because in our quest to be number one at Circle Sanctuary Podcasts, we are now number 2 to Songs of the Pagan Tribe, which I'm not sorry. They have a very large following. They get usually when they release, they get to 260 to 300 downloads right away, because he's always looking for new, interesting pagan songs to listen to, and so people will download and just play his podcast over and over and over again. So we're number 2 to him, but I'm not sorry. That's okay. We're still number 2. And I was going to say, I wanted to shout out to all my LARPers who are out there, who keep coming up to me at LARP before LARP starts and saying, hey, we listen to your podcast. We love your podcast. I appreciate those of you who've said, and I shared it with my husband, and now my husband listens religiously. And you guys really make me feel welcome, and surprise me every time somebody says that they're listening. And I always go, really? You're going to listen to us? Okay.
Us? You've listened to us?
You listen to me? But so I wanted to shout out and thank them very much for doing that, because they have made us very popular in the LARP community. And and I never thought that would be a statement I would say.
Recognition comes from the strangest places sometimes.
Strangest places. It really does. It really does. I was sitting there talking to someone and they were like, I'm not even pagan, and I listen. I'm like,
they must really like donkeys. I will occasionally go back and I'll listen to some of our first episodes, and I'm like, why the hell are we talking about donkeys so much? I don't understand.
We really did talk about donkeys a lot.
We talked about donkeys a lot. I was just like, oh, tell me that you were scrabbling for something to talk about, like you were nervous. Because listen, I loved the donkeys I grew up with, but they haven't been a big part of my life in like 25, almost 30 years. So like, right. But I'm glad that Red Ears, and I think we also mentioned the Longhorn Steer, Lots of Dots. I'm glad that they got a shout out so many years after their passing. Hopefully they heard us thinking about them over the Rainbow Bridge, because they were pretty amazing animals. So
yeah, we did talk about donkeys and Lots of Dots, and mules, because I used to ride a mule.
Yep.
When Papa Leaf furrowed Rose, but yeah,
Furrowed Rose. I remember
Rose.
I love that as a Southerner, that is a thing, because I grew up on a farm, but I have a really hard time saying it. And I don't know if it's because I'm Southern or if I have a little bit of a speech impediment. I know my mother does. You should hear her say the word hors d'oeuvres. It does not come out strategically accurate, or technically accurate. It is strategic, but it's strategically funny. Yeah, I think I may have a speech impediment, because I have a really hard time saying furrowed rose. I have to like furrowed rose. I have to lean into it, or it just is like it's like, what was there was a show. It didn't age super well, but 30 Rock. The blonde lady was in a movie, The Rural Juror. And for 2 years, I could not say that. And that was the joke in the show, was she couldn't say The Rural Juror. And it was a movie that she was in, but she couldn't say the title. And so nobody could ever find it, and it flopped. I couldn't say that. I could not say The Rural Juror. I had to train my mouth to make those sounds.
Yeah. Lots of words like that. At LARP, I'll go, do you want to do the gentle miscord? And they'll go miscordiant. And I'll go, okay. Sure, whatever you say. That's, I don't know how to pronounce those words.
That's why I've learned exactly one spell, and that is fireball.
Fireball. I also wanted to shout out to Oakley Cunningham. Oakley, you are my listener of the week. I have noticed how much you comment and share and like. I really, really appreciate you, Oakley Cunningham. Thank you for listening. I just wanted to give you a shout out. And somebody left a really long comment on one of our things.
Was it
Like,
a
it's so long,
YouTube
I
or a
can't,
TikTok or?
it's TikTok. So I'll have to go back and look at that. Cameron had a long comment. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, really like our TikTokers are pulling it in for us. We appreciate you. And I need to do one of the things I'm going to do today is do this. Please come and listen to The Hearth and the Stag when Rev Dia will be a guest on their podcast on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, live on Facebook. Look us up. Thank you, Kyler, for letting me do that so I can clip that and stick it on the TikToks this week.
You are very welcome. And thank you for letting me know ahead of time that we're going to be doing a listener of the week. I love that.
I think, well, I had reminded myself that I definitely wanted to mention Oakley Cunningham specifically because they really do. They like all of that, and Crimson Moon is the other one. They're just so super about commenting, liking, subscribing, and reposting and clipping and all of the things that help us continue to get followers. And so I really, really appreciate that.
And for the record, I do really love that. Understand that as an alpha level gay, everything that I say sounds like it has a connotation of shade. That's just because that's the way we sound. I can't really help it. No, I I will say the nicest things to people and they look at me like, what did I do to offend you? And I'm like, I don't mean to sound awful. I meant it from a place of love. No, I love that. And I totally just looked up Cameron's comment and I'm loving it. Totally agree. I've actually been trying really a lot, much good, to respond to comments on the social media. Dia does the lion's share of that work because I cannot remember that social media exists other than as this thing that tortures me. And so I try to go on because I love our listeners. Our listeners have great senses of humor. I will say this.
Yes.
I love the pagan sense of humor. I love the general level of knowledge and education within a
Yeah.
community because outside of academic circles, you will not find a group of people that are more just generally and genuinely knowledgeable about such a
Right.
wide variety of things. And that more than anything is my tribe. Like I feel like I would have found my way to a group of people like that, even if it wasn't necessarily pagan. But the fact that
Right.
it is about all those things that I love is wonderful. So I love seeing all of the things that our listeners put out there. Even the person who called me a Luddite, I really appreciated that, and I
Oh,
very
but it
much
was such a good
appreciated
delivery.
it was such a good delivery. And then the response was, Luddites are going to Luddite. And the response was, and sheep are going to baa. And I'm like, I don't know who you
Yes.
are, but if I had an address, you would be getting flowers and chocolates. Like that was wonderful. Like, and the thing is, I was at first, I was like, mm, he's coming for me. That was a zinger. And my genetic reflex is to zing back. But you can't do that on the internet because then that starts like internet trolling wars, and I don't want that.
Right.
And also, I don't know why I was offended because I call myself a Luddite. It's
Right.
like it's like okay when you do it, but if somebody else does it, that's my word. You leave that alone. That's sacred. Like I don't know. I'm ridiculous.
Well, I put everything I do on Finch. If you Finch app, text me, DM me and Finch me, and we will Finch together. But that's how come I remember that social media exists. I have broken Kyler again. I remember social media exists because my Finch app tells me when to remember social media exists, and that's how I remember.
I set reminders. I cannot add another app. You sent me the Finch thing, and I tried to do the Finch thing, and I tried 3 times to get into Finch, and it said, "We don't love you. We don't want you. You are judged." And I was like, you know what? I can't. I just can't be rejected again. And so I was like, no Finch for me. I'll stay with the other bird. That isn't a bird anymore. It looks like an adult site because they decided to name it X. And I don't even stay with that. Like I don't even check that. But Instagram and Facebook, which we're on Facebook and we're on Blue Sky and we're on
Yep.
Instagram. And I
Yep.
have been so good. I've been helping with the daily geomantic pulls. And
Yes.
because of the time difference, I actually, right before I go to bed, because it is usually because of the time difference, it's after midnight, I will post it before I go to bed the night before. And I've been really good about remembering to do it. And I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for that because I don't normally
Yay.
remember anything right before bed. But my phone reminds me, and that's helpful.
That is helpful. Well, the Finch app, if you don't know, is a great little game slash to do slash self-care app. If you haven't ever gotten into it, it's really great. And I do Finch, and you can make friends on Finch, and then you can buddy up about with each other to help each other
Mm-hmm.
remind things. In fact, I'm buddying up right now with Ashton. Shout out to Ashton. And she and I are walking. She's walking outside. I'm walking on my treadmill. That is our current agreement with each other that we'll do that. So we're working on that together. So yeah, it's a really great app. I like it. It's one of my go-tos. That's for sure.
Self-care. Who is she? I don't think I know her. Is she new to the
No.
neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
I try. I do. I'm going to go for a walk too. Right after this, I'm going to walk over to the fridge. And I seriously, I am officially this week we're back in the gym. Like it's been since we moved in here, it's been
Yeah.
utterly insane. And it's now been 3 months and I feel like a terrible person. I have got to go back to the gym. But because I am looking at the clock and we're burning through time in the way that we do. We have shouted out literally everything on the planet at this point, except what brings us a podcasting today. So the last time we gathered, Miss Dia took point and she questioned myself. She did an interview and we all got to know me a little bit more. And I have not listened to it, but I just know I was wordy AF. I feel it in my bones that I was very pontificating. So I apologize if you had to slog through the last one. But this time I get to interview the lovely Miss Dia. And I think that I came up with some decent questions for this. So knowing you as I do. So I will launch us off. You have had a really amazing career. You are a pagan author. You have raised a child in a goddess tradition. And we have had several conversations on podcast and a gazillion off about how the lovely Samuel is unindoctrinatable. Um, you have a thriving, interdependent, loving, nurturing community. And you're one of the more effective practitioners I personally know. So now that I've gilded the lily, was there a moment when you were coming up as a newer practitioner where you were just like, holy crap, I'm a witch? Probably didn't sound quite that gay, but did you have that boom, like that Tinkerbell dink moment? Oh, I didn't say that well. That Tinkerbell moment where she and then she with the wand and It's Wonderful World of Disney. Did you have that like aha epiphany moment?
I did. And now that I'm thinking about it, it was actually when another witch told me I didn't have a right to claim the title witch. And I went,
Oh,
oh no, 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 no. But I had written Family Coven, and
mm-hmm.
which is about the idea that the people you live together with and share food and housing and all of that becomes the spiritual center of your life, and I call that Family Coven. And I had written Family Coven. I had sent it off a couple of times. And one of the editors and I to this day don't know I don't remember where this was from, but they called me and they just reamed me out. Like, how dare you? And I couldn't figure it out. I was like really stunned at how vehemently awful and malicious this person was being to me over the phone, because they didn't call to tell me they wanted me. They called to tell me all the reasons why I sucked. And I was like, that's a lot of trouble to pick up the phone and call me to tell me all of this. And luckily I had this also happen when Birthing Hereditary Witchcraft Family Coven. the book is actually from a website that I used to have. And I took the website down when I published the book. Well, so I had already had some people come up to me and tell me, how dare you? And as I was meditating on this after this vehement altercation afterwards, I was like, oh, they're traditional witches and they don't want me to empower people to be their own priest and priestess, which is what my book was about. It was very anti-traditional British traditional witchcraft. It was very, you are a priest or priestess if you are a parent. And if you're a parent, then you need to consider yourself as such and then behave as such. And so that was a lot of what I kind of focused on. And it just occurred to me that they were only mad at me because I was not towing the status quo. And that's what I was like, oh, I kind of settled into my sovereignty and said, this is who I am and this is what I know. And what I know isn't wrong. It's just different. I wasn't saying that Brit Trads were wrong. I was just saying they weren't for me, and that they're not for a lot of people who have children, especially. And because there's not a lot of room in Brit Trads for children, quite frankly, because they're very into the work that they do. They're very adult oriented, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just doesn't speak to everybody. And I wanted to write a book that spoke to the people who weren't being spoken to. And so that's what I did. So yeah, that was probably when I owned my sovereignty and said, yeah, I'm a witch and I have knowledge and it's valuable.
And remembering, like, that book actually wound up on like the Huffington Post, like top 10 books every pagan
10.
should have on their bookshelf. So
Yep.
hearing that is kind of a surprise because I read it, I loved it. Like, I thought it was really insightful. But that conversation has one, you know, if you have ever been in the gravity or part of a Brit Trad, there is that kind of feeling. There is that sentiment. I will never forget when my own teacher told me, I had already been a practitioner for many years. I had already been inducted into initiated into a clerical group, and I was told, well, you're not a witch until we give you a cord. And I'm like, Precious, at no point are you the one who determines that I'm a witch.
Right.
There is at no point that a witch is one who traffics with familiar spirits. And in traditions, you don't claim the title of witch in the tradition until you are an initiate. And you know, that's all well and good. You can choose not to call me something. That doesn't mean that I'm not. And I think that's not a lot of damage to the community, to the community at large.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, you know, that was kind of what I came to. I can remember after this woman called me and blessed me out, I got in bed. I was really depressed. And it was interesting to me that what got me out of bed and what had me understand all of this was that Tony went to the family light, lit the family light, said a prayer that I would get out of bed and understand what happened. And 20 minutes later, I came out of the bedroom and went, oh, I get it now. They're Brit Trad. They just didn't like what I was saying. It wasn't really about me. It was about the ideas that I was espousing that they were so vehemently against, and it offended them. And I've met a lot of people, and there are people today in the Atlanta community who will say I'm not a high priestess because I'm not a high priestess in their tradition. And that's one of the things I hope somebody hears me say. When you meet someone in a tradition, in a Brit Trad or any tradition, and they say, you're not a witch in our tradition, hear the in our tradition part. And understand that they're just saying that in their tradition, you're not what they think. But that doesn't mean you aren't that thing. It just means you aren't that thing in their way. That's all that it means. That's what it means. It is an exclusion based on something you're not even a part of. Right. The last time I had someone tell me that I wasn't a high priestess, I went, to you.
Yeah. And who
And
are
he was
they?
like, no, we don't think you're a high priestess. I know, to you, I'm not a high priestess. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not in your tradition. To you, I'm not. That doesn't mean I'm not. It just means I'm not to you,
Mm-hmm.
which is fair.
That is, I mean, that is fair. Like, according to their system, they don't recognize that you have that rank, and that's completely fine. Um, if you have worn the mantle, then you are. It. I was actually explained to me when I was going through the process that when you get your degree, they're not giving you a degree. They're recognizing what you have already mastered. And whether they choose
Right.
to give it to you or not, if you've mastered it, I mean, if you don't need their recognition, there you go. And that's not to
Right.
say that Brit Trads don't have so many wonderful things. I have been
Yes.
part of a Brit Trad and I loved my time there. There were some things that frustrated me, but by and large, I learned a huge amount and I met some of the most amazing people I've ever met and learned and grew in wonderful ways. It, as you were saying though, it wasn't a community necessarily for kids. They were teaching priesthood. It was almost monastical in how they did it. That's not the environment you want, young children in. So like, where is the place for that? And that was a conversation I had a couple of times too. It was just in the creation of priesthood, where's the place for the laity? And that's a problem that I think that traditional, like really traditional, like fresh out of Britain, that's a problem that those Wiccan traditions have kind of struggled with, especially in America,
Mm-hmm.
where like it's faith is like a family thing, or at least in most cases. If
Mm-hmm.
you are practicing, you want a safe space for your children to be exposed to spirit, and in many cases, so that they can determine whether or not that's their path. And that's one thing I really loved about your book was you really gave the space to for a child to grow in the direction that they wanted to without pushing an
Mm-hmm.
agenda. I
Right.
appreciated that. And it's odd, not odd. It's synchronistic. It's serendipitous. That's one of my favorite words. I never get to use it. That was your example. Because my next question for you was one of the phrases that you use often, and I've now absorbed it into my lexicon, is power with, not power over. So you
Mm.
are not a fan of hierarchical power systems.
No.
So what does that phrase mean to you in its various permutations?
Well, I first came across, I want to credit T. Thorne Coyle for first saying this to me, power with, not power over. And it was something that I kind of picked up and ran with after that. I do believe it was her that I first heard this from, but it aptly describes what I feel like clergy should be seeking. Any
Mm-hmm.
clergy, any religion, the clergy should be seeking a power with in an empowerment of other people versus having some authoritative power over that we see so often in other traditions. And for me, that's, what I want to instill in others is an empowerment of, and if there has to be power, then let's share the power as a group. It's very reclaiming. Reclaiming is a tradition that's from Starhawk,
Mm-hmm.
and reclaiming is very much power with. There's no leader in reclaiming. Everybody has a singular vote, and that vote is weighted in the same way as it is everybody
Mm-hmm.
else's. Doesn't matter if you've been in the group 50 years or 2 weeks. If you're in the group, then you have a weighted vote, and that's the way Willow is now. Willow, we my vote as a high priestess only counts for one vote. It doesn't weigh out anybody else's vote. And if I think that we're going off in the wrong direction, then I tend to have meetings and say, okay, let's talk this out till we come to a consensus
Mm-hmm.
that, and everybody has the same information and we're all making the same information, the same decisions based on the same information. And so that's kind of how I do it. So it's important to me, especially the idea of empowerment of people. I think in my early years as a Christian and my early years in the craft, there was a very big sense of power over, and it was very damaging. especially because a lot of people who believe in power over abuse that power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when you have that situation, it makes for very, very destructive relationships. And I don't want to be part of those destructive patterns. And that's not to say, by the way, that I have always been this way. Even I fell into the destructive patterns of power over people and had to adjust and take time off and think through that situation. I think that it's important in the craft that you understand that you are what you choose to be. And if what you're doing doesn't resonate with who you really want to be, take a break and then make yourself into the person you choose to be. And so I have done my own share of damage being in power over others and have learned, unfortunately, at the pain of others, that that is not okay, and that it's harmful, and it accomplishes nothing but demoralizing other people.
Oh, well said. I very much like that. And it's so interesting looking back at, the years that I've been in the craft and the different communities, the ones who really get that. Like I will remember when I first started learning with the WCC, somebody asked me what being priesthood meant to me. And I was not anticipating being grilled at that point because it's just a social gathering, but they like to throw these things in there to get your honest reaction before you've had a chance to ponder it. And luckily my response was pretty close to what they were looking for, I think. But the phrase first amongst servants, that's what high priest or high priesthood meant, was
Mm-hmm.
the first amongst servants. You don't have power over, you are there to facilitate. Like if you look at like traditional circles, like traditional covens or covenants, there is a role of the magister versus like in Wicca that has priest and priestess and all that. The magister is in many cases an admin role. You are there to facilitate the space and the working and why you're all coming together, but your vote doesn't mean any extra. Your job is literally just to take care of logistics, and that role will change. Like you'll hold it for an agreed upon period of time and then it switches to someone else so that you can let that burden go so that you can enjoy it as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I really like that, and I think especially with what's happening in the world right now, the the idea of power handled with humility and not ego is definitely the song that we should all be singing together. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
is really healthy. Um, as a practitioner, well, just as a person, as a Dia walking around in the world, when did you first feel your kind of initial pull to the craft?
Well, I mean, infamously, I asked my grandmother what prophecy she would give me, and she said, "The children of the moon will find you and count you as one among you." And then the first time I picked up a book on the craft, it started with, "We are the children of the moon." And so I threw the book over my shoulder and ran out of the bookstore. Um, because in that moment I could hear my grandmother going, "The children of the moon will find you." And I was like, oh crap, chunk. I did eventually go back and get a book. No, I don't remember what book it was that said that. I wish to this day that I did, but I was totally freaked out. And it may not have been the first page. For all I know, I just flopped it open and that's what it said. So I think that, but I think the Shadagaya story is probably the other moment when I was going to meet with a high priestess in Chattanooga, who's still a high priestess in Chattanooga. And I was going up Lookout Mountain, which is a bunch of switchbacks and very, it's a mountainous road. And I
Mm-hmm.
came around and I'm praying as I go up this mountain, if I'm doing the wrong thing, I need you to give me a sign. And if I'm doing the right thing, I need a sign. I need a sign that is very clearly one way or the other, because I am dense that way, and that's what I need. And I need to understand that I'm not burning in hell. And I came around the corner into a space where you could see off the mountain, and there were golden eagles flying on the currents. And one just turned, the one I looked at turned right around, like did a 180, started coming to me, flew down onto the road, came over my car, flapped its wings, talons out, screeching, and then flew on over my car and off. And I was so startled that I turned to the car that was going the opposite direction that had stopped, because I had stopped. And I pointed out the window, like, did that just happen? And the guy was like, that just happened. Holy crap, what is going on? And I was like, okay. And so when I made it to this priestess's house, she opened the door and she goes, who died? And I said, oh, my faithlessness died. And we looked up Shadagaya. Shadagaya is a positive sign from the Great Spirit to the Cherokee people, especially when you're setting out on a new journey, especially when you're setting out on a quest. And that's certainly where I was in my life at the moment. And that is what I have taken that to mean ever since. And I've actually had people try to tell me, are you sure it wasn't God telling you don't do this? I was like, yeah, for pretty sure. Yeah. I think between my grandmother's foretelling and what Shadagaya actually represented, I think had it been a different bird, we could have a different conversation. Maybe if it had been a raven or something, a crow, I might have had a different connotation to it, or even an owl. But the fact that it was a golden eagle specifically, and that at the time, my lineage as being adjacent to the Cherokee was really important to my familial line. That there was lots of stories passed down about that. And so, yeah, it was that. I think that was it. That was when I went, oh yeah, this is what I am, and I'm never going to be anything else.
I think I would like to say, one, congratulations, because that's a really awesome prophecy to have. I might feel a little slighted if the children of the moon are going to find you doesn't refer to a 6'5" muscly alpha werewolf that plans on. I read a lot of like urban paranormal, so I'm just going to say it may be a little smutty. But yeah, if he doesn't have like shoulder length hair and the perfect beard and a jaw that can cut glass, I might have felt a little slighted, just. And if I found him in a bookstore, that's even better, because then he's nerdy. I totally down with that. You've walked a lot of steps in the craft. You've seen and you've done a lot. You make me feel lazy, which is not the easiest thing to do. What is, in all of these various adventures and experiences that you've had, have you come across like a personal blockage that you face? Like, what is like one of the big barriers or boundaries that you had to break through in order to get your craft into the shape and the path that you most wanted to walk?
So I am, and this is no secret, I'm an adult survivor of incest and severe abuse. And that has caused me to have two issues that have come up in my craft over and over. And one is a desire to please people, above all else. And then having no self-esteem whatsoever. And I think those two things have been a big hindrance in my craft for a long time. I think the desire to please people as a person who tends toward the role of leadership, because that's how they're made. I think that's very dangerous, because then you get into relationships that are very unhealthy, because you stay in relationships that are unhealthy because you're trying to please them. And that's what you've done all your life. And that's what you know that if you could just get this one person to be pleased with you, then things would be okay. And it's a fallacy of abuse that tells you this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Abused people are told, if you would just be better, if you would just do better, if you would just be prettier, if you would just be nicer, if you would just be friendlier, whatever it is, then none of this abuse would happen to you. And so then you end up in verbally, abusive and emotionally abusive relationships because you're trying to find that pleaseness. Now, I think with time, I'm getting better and better about it. And oddly enough, I think LARP has really helped because I'm doing something. I wear a tattoo on my face when I LARP. When people see me in the real world, they're not thinking, well, that's normal. They definitely are thinking it's not, but it's made me feel in possession of myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's made me feel like I'm okay just the way I am. And I think a lot of it has to do with how LARPers accept each other and the
Mm-hmm.
just unfettered acceptance they give to each other. And I think that's been a big part of my healing from that. And I think the self-esteem thing has also been helped by LARP as well. I think that I've worked on it a little at a time, but you have to have some self-esteem to go out and make a fool of yourself.
It's
Like
true.
it's
It's true.
required.
Yeah. It's a thing. The first time you play D&D, you feel like the dumbest dork that's ever dorked. Like I remember I could not slip into a character to save my life. I was utterly
Yep.
terrified. And I do voices and stuff constantly, but like people were looking. I I would make a fool of myself. And then by like the third session, I was a completely different person. It's
Right.
incredibly freeing when you do that role acting
Mm-hmm.
because you can be any of the things that you've ever wanted to be. That's really awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think those two things were my big stumbling blocks, and I'm still working on them. I wouldn't say that
Hmm.
I've overcome them. I would say that I'm better about it.
Yeah. Well, it's a journey, right? Like, I mean, we're not done until we're done, and then we're probably going to get another turn around the wheel. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
it very much is the journey and not the destination. And I think that's something that's super important for practitioners. You don't have to be perfect. I have a friend who told me this phrase, and it just rang the bell in my heart. I think one of the worst things that's ever happened to the human condition is idealism. This idea that you have to be perfect, that you have to strive to perfection. Your
Mm-hmm.
job is to live your life. Your job is to just be there and to live your life and try to be the best person that you can, but know
Right.
that you're never going to be perfect. You're
Right.
you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have regrets. If you haven't lived.
Yep.
That's
I would agree.
so I had a couple of questions, but you actually just kind of brought us into another one that I thought about this morning. So the idea within Wicca and paganism of like radical acceptance.
Mm.
That's one that's been around for a long time that we as pagans and practitioners have to always have our door open and have to accept everybody and meet them with where they're at. What is your reaction to radical acceptance?
I think it's radical acceptance with common sense.
What is that?
Ah, radical acceptance. I mean, look, you don't have to put up with people's bad behavior. And it's
Mhm.
one of the things that I wrote about in Family Coven was about there is bad behavior. Just because we live in a world where we want to be as accepting as possible doesn't mean we have to accept people who break the law and
Mhm.
in ways that are harmful to other human beings. It doesn't mean that we have to be accepting of every behavior that darkens our door, right? It's radical acceptance with common sense. Let's have some radical acceptance, and I think there is a place for that. But then I think by your behavior and by the choices you make depends on whether that acceptance continues to be extended.
Mhm.
I can accept you without you being in my sphere of influence. I could say, I accept you over there.
Mhm.
Like, you don't need to be in my sphere of influence because you're destructive. So you be destructive over there. I accept that you're destructive. One of my teachers, when I was first in the craft, said, you can trust a snake to be a snake.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really good way to look at this idea of radical acceptance. You can accept somebody as a snake, and then you can understand that as a snake, they're going to do snaky things.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean
I
you
think
don't
one of the
accept them. It just means that
yeah.
you anticipate that they are going to behave as they have told
Yep.
you they will behave.
Yep. As Maya Angelou said, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. I love the
Right.
way she said. I miss her voice so much.
Yeah.
Like that woman could read names out of the phone book and I would fall in love. Um, cool. So I think for a lot of folks who have gotten into the craft, I mean, they read about radical acceptance and certainly like inclusivity and everything today is like a huge issue because we have all these forces that are pushing back on acceptance,
Right.
on all of that. And certainly the history of the craft has not been without trauma, without its own scandal, and there has been abuse of power and all of that. I think one of the really cool things about the craft is we'll call it out. Like we will call
Mm-hmm.
it out. Like we've
Mm-hmm.
there have been several times we've talked about like the review and the audit of the Southern Baptist Conference, and obviously everybody knows what's happened with Catholicism and their divine witness protection program and all of that. The But I think that that is one of the things that we are beginning to see more and more of in pagan leadership is the
Mm-hmm.
willingness to call out not just bad behavior, but when we make a mistake. I think that that's a sign of a really healthy ego, and that makes me happy to see in any kind of movement. Um, that being said, moving from the topic of radical acceptance, what is one thing that pagans at large do that just drives you absolutely bonkers? Just it's a pet peeve, or it makes you want to pull your hair out, like something that just irritates the P. England dog mess out of you.
I think it's the harm none thing.
Oh,
I when I read somebody who said this terrible thing has happened to me, put upon me by another person, and I'm just trying to sit in my zen and be harm none, I just want to write back and go, why? Like, why? Why? That and the whole yeah, it goes all hand in hand, the kind of all love and light and let's all just
hmm,
love each other, and life is not like that. That is not that's not life has there are bad people that sometimes you
yeah,
can't love. I don't um there are people who have behavior that don't need to be in your sphere of influence anymore. You
mm-hmm,
shouldn't have to put up with biological family members who are violent
mm-hmm,
and harassing and other unpolite things.
mm-hmm,
You don't have to put up with that. And harm none doesn't extend to those who are harmful. That it doesn't you harm none is not a free pass to come over and smack you in the face
mm-hmm.
and get away with it. Somebody hits me in the face, I'm calling the cops and I'm pressing charges. I don't care who you are. You don't get to
Yep,
hit me in the face.
yep.
So I think that's what drives me crazy is that we should just love each other. Oh, we
So when
sometimes
you
call
say that
that fluffy
voice,
bunny.
yes, yes. I got in so much trouble because I kept using the phrase fluffy bunny, and I got in trouble because people were offended by me using the phrase fluffy bunny, and I will fully admit that I have never stopped using that phrase. I I just know at some point I'm going to say it on this podcast and I'm going to get some flack for it. But I
Yeah,
mean, it's the thing. It's like, I mean, if you live in a world of cotton candy clouds and happy fun time rainbows, that's wonderful. Cotton candy's too sweet, and I'm a weird gay guy because I don't have rainbows all over everything. They just kind of clash with my decor, which I think is really that next level of interior design homosexual. But like, it's a thing. Like if someone hurts you or hurts someone that you care about, you have to be willing. If you don't protect yourself, you're giving them carte blanche. Like turning the other cheek is great, but you're going to keep getting slapped. I don't enjoy being slapped. It's a thing. And I think now a lot of people are really kind of wrestling with where's that line? When do I push back? In a greater
right.
sense, like what's happening in the world. It's like
Mhm.
Okay, I keep getting pushed. I keep seeing these terrible things happening. At what point is that line a step too far? When do I push back? And then also the knowledge that, at least on a macro level, they kind of want us to push back and it's a whole thing. But no, I think I could see that that would also be my thing. I think that's what I'm trying to
Mhm.
say. It's a thing. Like also when you say let's all just get along, it reminds me, I don't know if you ever saw the YouTube video Come to Candy Mountain, Charlie. Come to Candy Mountain, Charlie. Have you ever? No?
No, I've never seen that.
You need to go to YouTube and you need to look it up because it's an acid trip. It's absolutely hilarious. It makes absolutely no sense. People will chant that, like younger kids, like Gen A. It is from the olden times, the early days of YouTube, back, before the deep magic was written on the stone table, and the early days of YouTube. And so kids today will sometimes come to Candy Mountain, Charlie, and they have no idea what they're referencing. And I'm like, oh, you know
Mm.
that? That's cool. I'm not an ancient person who doesn't understand modern slang. And then I find out, no, they're quoting the deep magic, but they don't understand it. Okay, that's fine. Seriously, two
They're
more
fluffy
years and I'm
bunnies.
they're fluffy bunnies. Um, I can't say that about Gen A because yes, they are fluffy bunnies, but they're also like rabid honey badgers. Like that's the thing. This world is not
Mm.
ready for Gen A, Dia. They're not. Like every generation has like a felt sense to them. There is a teacher who put out like a video. It's like the world is not ready for Gen A. These kids are rabid honey badgers. They have no faith in any systems. They do not care. If you give them a boundary or a border or a challenge, they're going to chew their way through it. And I'm like, that, and you're not going to know that the chewing is coming because you won't understand a single thing they're saying because we speak totally different languages. Oh, um where do you see yourself in like your craft, your practice, maybe even your tradition? Where do you see yourself going in the future? This is that, where do you see yourself in 5 years in the job interview question? That's kind of obligatory.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, it's
I don't know. I would like to write another book and have it
mhm.
published. But I'm having a hard time settling on what that book should be. I think that's part of my problem.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know that I'll publish another book or not. I haven't figured it out yet. So I think what I'm trying to do is with my degenerative illness and my chronic illness, I feel like if I can just keep doing the things I'm doing today and still be doing those things in 5 years, that would be great.
Mhm.
So if I could still be running a group and be part of a group that is thriving and new people are coming to the craft through us, that would be great. And if I could still be studying and learning, that would be great. I would appreciate
Mhm.
that. And I recently have thought about becoming a patient advocate. And
Mhm.
so I think it would be nice if I was board certified by, you know, in the next 5 years and could do that as a side job,
Mhm.
like part time, and advocate for other people who are chronically ill and disabled and are facing a system that doesn't make a lot of room for us. So that's kind of where I think I would be in 5 years, maybe.
That's really cool. I mean, especially like you recently started studying with OBA, the Order of uh Ovates, Bards, and Druids, right?
Yes, I did.
Very,
I'm
very
doing
cool.
I'm doing their on they have a year and a day program for each of the three levels, and they have it's basically a weekly study guide that
Mm-hmm.
they give out. And I'm doing that for my own self, not for anybody else. I'm doing that for my own spiritual continued growth. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I'll probably keep doing that. And I've met some wonderful people in Obod, and I've found a lot of new friends in Obod, and I've really enjoyed that. So
Mm-hmm.
and friends that I'm not, ministering to, friends that are just friends.
Yeah. Now that's really important. Like as a somebody who's been involved in community leadership, eventually it can get to the point where that's the only hat you're wearing. Like you never really get to
Right.
switch off, and all of your relationships are people that are part of a community that you serve. And it's much harder to make space and time for yourself when you're in that mindset, and kind of keeping enough core sacred space for you so that you're being replenished and having enough time. I imagine that's further difficult, or there's a further level of difficulty when you do have an autoimmune issue and you've got a limited number of spoons every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think my next, and this is my last question for the day, if you had unlimited financial resources, what are some of the things that you would do? And I mean, we're talking like 10 times George Soros. Oh, I said the bad name, they're going to come for us. If you had unlimited financial resources, what are a couple of things that you would do?
I would buy property and set up a pagan conference center
Mm,
with probably along the lines of maybe a state, like with a community kitchen, and
mm-hmm,
then some cabins set up for people to stay in, and a community shower, that kind of thing. Um,
mm-hmm.
Not really roughing it, but definitely not. And then make that space available for events, and have some areas for camping. And
Mm-hmm.
then I would also have a bookstore, and I would set up whatever freaking 501c3 I wanted.
Right. And
I
pay
would
someone to
set
do the
that up,
paperwork.
right?
Yeah.
Pay somebody to do the paperwork. I would take, I would live my life doing exactly what I'm doing now, only
Mm-hmm.
on a larger scale, because I would have the money and the funds to buy it property, and really dig into having big events and having those events hosted on that property. That would be what I would do. And set it up so that if the apocalypse ever came, a bunch of pagans could show up at my gate and we'd all commune together. That would be my goal. I
I
would
love
have
that.
a garden that I didn't have to tend. That's the other thing I would do. I would
There you
hire a
go.
gardener.
Mm-hmm.
Hire a gardener to do all my herbs and all my things, and I wouldn't have to worry about it.
Listen, I personally believe that every like middle class or upper gay man, once they reach middle years, should have a beautiful, toned, perfectly bronzed gardener that has an allergy to wearing shirts and always seems to glisten in the summer sun. Like I firmly believe that. So I'm on board with the garden that you do not have to tend.
Yeah,
Um,
I just want somebody to do the work. I don't
right.
care if
That
they
may be
have
a little
a
cringy,
glistening
but
bot or
that
not.
lives in my
Yeah.
heart. Very cool. Well, Dia, thank you for attending your own podcast and allowing me to interrogatory you today. It's so funny. I have known you for so many years, and it's like every time we talk, I learn something else about you. Like
Hmm.
just how many lives have you lived? How many days have you been on this earth to do all the things you've done? I very much appreciate that about you. And it's one of the things like when we started this podcast, I was like, are we going to have enough to talk about? And like, I mean, what happens when we get to like the end of like what we know and all that? But like
Yeah.
so far, I don't see an end in sight. And I begin to realize just how nerdy we've been in the 40 some odd and 50 some odd years we've been on this planet, because it just seems like we've absorbed all of the interwebs. So like
Yep.
we have all of this information. So thank you. And thank you for coming and playing our game today and being open and vulnerable and answering the questions. And as I peter out here, it's resiliency corner time,
Resiliency
isn't it?
corner. Yep.
Yeah.
It's resiliency corner. And my resiliency corner is get a therapist. I've
Oh,
been
yeah.
attending therapy all my life. It's, if I had one piece of advice to give anybody about the craft or anything else, it's get a therapist, see them once or twice a month, but have a therapist,
Yeah.
and work on your issues as much as you can, because that is the calling of the craft. The calling of the craft is for you to be your best self and to face all the things that you know are not right and within you, not with others, within yourself. And if you do that, then you're going to have a great craft. That's my resiliency corner. What about you?
Well, not knowing exactly when this podcast is going to air, we have recently, as a country, been living through a moral, a social, a psychic assault. And it's been really hard for people. So the other day, when I felt not powerless, but kind of powerless, like a need to do something, I wrote a prayer. And I think for my resiliency corner, I'm going to share that. And so if everybody wants to just take a moment with me. Gods of old, above and below, from Odin at his high vantage across the railroad, the first amongst the Asa, to Brigid, weaving through her four flames, and fierce Inanna, champion of all humankind. Proud and wise Persephone, you who judge at your husband's side, true queen of the depths. We ask you for your strength and the wisdom to guide us in these times. We ask that you bless our minds that we may avoid the pitfalls of deserved rage. Bless our eyes that they may see the truth through the lies. Our voices so that they may be raised in just and wise outrage. Our hearts that are the anchor of your shrines and beat with the courage to do what must be done in service to all our brothers and sisters. Bless our knees that kneel in honor and stand tall in opposition. Our feet so that they may carry us that one step further in defense of honor, justice, and truth. Bless us, ye gods of old, above and below. We are your children, and in these dark and perilous times, we ask a guiding light through the shadow. So mote it be.
So mote it be.
Thank you for listening to Urban Unwitches. Please reach co-host Kyler Petrie and Rev Dia at urbanunwitches@gmail.com. That's urbanunwitches@gmail.com to suggest topics for shows or comment on past episodes. Please join our Discord channel, Urban Unwitches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban Unwitches. Follow us on YouTube at Urban Unwitches to watch all episodes. And listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. Rev Dia is a witch for hire as an officiant, life coach, astrologer, geomancer, and medium, and can be reached at www.revdia.net. See you next time. Thank you for joining us on the Circle Podcast, presented by Circle Sanctuary, and produced for all who follow nature-centered paths. Join us throughout the week for various programming connecting with the community around the world. Please don't forget to watch for updates on the Circle Sanctuary website at www.circlesanctuary.org. Follow us on Facebook at Facebook/Circle Podcasts. We can also be found on your favorite podcast hosting sites, such as iTunes, Spotify, and others. Until next time, many blessings.